I don't know if I believe in ghosts or monsters or whatever the hell I saw that night, but I do know one thing: I'll never go back to that cabin again. It happened last winter. A friend of mine, Mark, had invited me and 2 others, Jess and Ryan, to spend a few days at his family's cabin. It was deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest town. A perfect little getaway, or so we thought. The first couple of days were great. Snowball fights, bad horror movies, drinking too much by the fireplace. The usual. But on the 3rd night, the blizzard rolled in. And that's when things got weird. We lost power around midnight. The fire was still going, but the cabin fell into an eerie silence. Outside, the wind screamed through the trees. We huddled together, joking about how this was the perfect setup for a horror movie. Then we heard it. A knock at the front door. We all froze. "Did you hear that?" Jess whispered. Ryan laughed nervously. "Probably just a branch." Another knock, louder this time. Mark grabbed a flashlight and went to the door. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. Then the knocking came again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. "Who the hell would be out here in this storm?" Jess muttered. Against all common sense, Mark unlatched the door and cracked it open. Nothing. Just darkness and swirling snow. Then, footprints. Fresh ones, leading up to the door, but none leading away. Mark slammed the door shut, bolting it this time. Nope. That's some horror movie crap right there. We laughed it off, but no one was really laughing. The unease settled in, thick as the cold air creeping through the cracks. Hours passed, the storm raged on. We dozed off in shifts, taking turns watching the fire. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps inside the cabin. Soft, slow, deliberate. My breath caught in my throat. I turned my head just enough to see Mark, still asleep by the fire. Ryan and Jess were curled up under blankets, but across the room near the window stood a figure. Tall. Too tall. Its head nearly grazing the ceiling. Its arms long and thin, fingers ending in sharp points. It just stood there motionless, its head tilted like it was listening. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to move. Then, the thing did something worse than anything I could have imagined. It smiled. Not in a human way, not in a kind way. Its mouth stretched too wide, revealing jagged teeth. It took a single slow step toward me. The floor didn't creak. I squeezed my eyes shut. It's not real. It's not real. When I opened them, it was gone. The next morning, I told the others. Mark just shook his head, pale as death. "I saw it too," he whispered. None of us spoke the rest of the trip. When the storm cleared, we packed up and left, fast. Mark sold the cabin a month later. He never said why, but I think we all knew. Something was in those woods, something that still waits for the next group of visitors to come knocking. I have never been able to explain what happened that winter. It was the year I got into a car accident on an icy back road, far from any town or help. The next thing I remember, I was waking up in a hospital bed, my head pounding, the world around me unnaturally silent. I was in a small hospital, at least that's what it seemed like. The walls were that sickly shade of off-white, the kind that made everything feel too sterile, too empty. But something was off. There was no beeping from monitors, no muffled voices in the halls, no hum of machines. Just silence. A nurse appeared by my bedside, her uniform outdated, like something from the 1950s. Her face was pale, her smile too wide. "You're lucky," she said, her voice strangely distant. "The storm is terrible tonight." I tried to ask where I was, but my throat was dry, my voice barely a croak. She placed a cool hand on my wrist. "You need rest." Then she turned and left, disappearing into the hallway. I laid there for a while, staring at the ceiling, listening. The silence pressed down on me. No distant footsteps, no intercom calls, no other patients. Something about the air felt wrong, stale, unmoving. I pressed the call button on my bed. No response. I tried again. Nothing. I had to get up, had to see what was going on. When I swung my legs over the side of the bed, I noticed something strange. There were no wires attached to me, no monitors. I wasn't hooked up to anything. The hallway outside my room stretched long and empty. The fluorescent lights flickered, buzzing softly. I walked carefully, peeking into open doors. Every room was vacant, the beds made, the equipment untouched, as if no one had been there in years. Then I saw her. The nurse, standing at the end of the hall, facing away from me. My breath caught. Something was wrong with the way she stood, her back too straight, too stiff. I stepped closer. "Hello?" She didn't move. I took another step, and that's when she turned. Her face was gone. Not a blank space, just nothing. A void where her features should have been. A hollow, gaping absence. And then she started walking toward me. Fast. I stumbled back, my heart slamming in my chest. The lights flickered violently, the buzzing turning into a screech. Doors slammed open down the hallway one by one, but the rooms were still empty. I ran. I don't remember how I got out. I just remember the cold, the snow biting my skin as I stumbled into the storm outside. And then, headlights. A car skidded to a stop. A man jumped out, rushing toward me. "Are you okay? What the hell are you doing out here?" I turned back toward the hospital, but it was gone. Just an empty field covered in fresh snow. No building, no lights. No sign it had ever been there. The man took me to the real hospital, a small modern facility miles away. They found no records of me being checked in before that. No old hospital anywhere near where I'd been found. But when they handed me my personal belongings, I found something that hadn't been mine before. A small, yellowed hospital bracelet. The name was smudged. But the date? It was from 1952. Hey, so I've got a story for you. You know how much I love winter, right? The snow, the chill, everything slowing down. It's my vibe. But there's one winter I'll never forget, and trust me, it completely changed how I feel about snowstorms. It was a couple of years ago. I decided I needed a break from everything, work, life, you name it. So, I booked a weekend at this cabin way up in the woods. The place was remote, like seriously isolated, and I figured that's exactly what I needed. A little peace and quiet, you know? I drove up late afternoon and everything was fine. The road was winding and narrow, but it felt like an adventure. The cabin itself was perfect, small, cozy, with a wood stove and big windows that looked out onto the snow-covered forest. I was ready to just disconnect, read, write, and relax. I didn't even check if the cabin had Wi-Fi, and honestly, I was fine with that. The first night was peaceful. The wind picked up outside and snow started falling harder, but I was cozy inside. It wasn't until around midnight that things got weird. I woke up suddenly. You know that feeling when everything's just off? That's how I felt. At first I thought it was the wind, but then I heard something. A scraping sound. Slow, deliberate, like something was dragging against the walls. It was weird enough that I got out of bed and grabbed a flashlight. I went to the window, hoping to see something that would make sense of the noise. But outside it was just snow. Nothing. Then, it happened again. 3 loud knocks. Boom, boom, boom. I froze. It didn't make sense. There was no one out there. Who the hell would be knocking in this storm? But then I heard it. A voice, soft but clear, calling from outside. Let me in. I stood there, frozen, trying to convince myself it was the wind or my imagination. But then, the knocks came again, louder this time, and the voice followed. Let me in. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart was pounding in my chest and I could barely breathe. It felt like the cabin was being surrounded by something. something that wanted to get in. After what felt like forever, the knocks stopped, and the voice faded, leaving only the sound of the wind. The rest of the night was silent, but I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin, every gust of wind felt like something was lurking outside, waiting. I don't think I've ever been so aware of how alone I was. It was like the whole forest was holding its breath, watching. When morning finally came, I didn't waste any time. I grabbed my things, rushed outside, and that's when I saw it. There were footprints leading up to the cabin, but they didn't go anywhere. There were no prints leading away. It was like whoever, or whatever, had been there had just vanished. I didn't stay another night. I left right then and there, driving through the storm as fast as I could. I kept thinking about the knocks, the voice, and those footprints. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching me, something that didn't want me to leave. I still don't know what happened out there, but I'm never going back. Not for anything. And to be honest, even now, sometimes when I hear the wind howl like that, I can't help but remember those knocks. The ones that sounded too real.